Okay, just imagine this for a second. You stumble upon a lost manuscript, a secret journal from one of the most, well, outrageous philosophers in all of history. That's exactly what we're going to dive into today. The private, hidden thoughts of Diogenes. You know, the guy who famously lived in a barrel. And it all comes from this text, The Lamp at Noon. And wow, this text just hits you right out of the gate with its big idea. Look, we all think we know Diogenes, right? The ultimate master of philosophical theater. But what this manuscript shows us is the struggle, the private doubt that was happening behind the curtain. It really makes you wonder, was he just playing a role, or did he actually become the character he was playing? All right, so let's start with the legend, the myth of Diogenes. This is the guy we all picture, right? The man living in a barrel, wandering around in broad daylight with a lamp, claiming he's looking for an honest man. He wasn't just a philosopher. He was like a living, breathing piece of performance art. And of course, there's that story, the most famous one of all, his little showdown with Alexander the Great. You have the most powerful man in the world standing in front of him, offering him literally anything his heart desires. And what does Diogenes say? Stand out of my sunlight. I mean, talk about the ultimate mic drop, the ultimate act of defiance. But was it really? Well, this is where that lost manuscript just completely flips the script on us. Get this. Diogenes himself admits it was all a performance on both sides. He says Alexander was playing the part of the generous, all-powerful ruler, and he was playing the part of the wise man who couldn't care less. It was pure theater. And you know what? Both of them were absolute masters at it. But, this performance wasn't just for show. It had a real purpose. His whole public philosophy was about what he called defacing the currency. Basically, he wanted to challenge all the stuff society just accepted without thinking. The conventions, the beliefs, the values. He saw it all as a kind of giant web of lies, and he made his life's mission to just tear it all down. And one of his biggest targets? You guessed it, other philosophers. He had this brilliant term for what they were doing. He said they were selling maps of virtue. Think about it. They were offering these neat, step-by-step instructions on how to be a good person, almost like a GPS for morality. Like you could just follow the directions and poof, you've arrived at the good life. And oh, he really went after Plato on this. He basically said that Plato's maps were leading people to some imaginary, perfect world of forms and ideals. And the result? His students spent their entire lives just staring at the map, completely forgetting to look down and experience the actual, real territory they were standing on. Aristotle didn't get off any easier, let me tell you. Diogenes saw his whole golden mean and moderation philosophy as just another one of these useless maps. He argued that Aristotle's students were so busy with their little philosophical measuring sticks, always trying to calculate the exact perfect midpoint between two extremes, that they never actually got around to living. For Diogenes, it was all about the action, not the calculation. There's this one story that just perfectly captures his whole thing: brutal, uncomfortable honesty over some empty performance. A young guy comes up to him, bragging about how he gave away all his money to be virtuous. Diogenes just calls him right out. He says, you didn't give anything away. You just traded one kind of currency, money, for another kind, the prestige of being seen as a spiritual guy. See, he didn't care what your life was as long as you were honest about it. Okay. So up to this point, we've got this picture of a super confident, untouchable critic, right? Well, this is where the story takes a huge turn, because that manuscript, it reveals that behind that tough exterior was a man absolutely eaten up by doubt. Doubts about his entire life's work. So that just begs the question, doesn't it? The guy who made a career out of calling out everyone else's lies and performances, what was the one thing he was most afraid of when it came to his own life? And here it is, his biggest fear. He was terrified that he had wasted his whole life by making a spectacle out of honesty instead of just being honest. Think about that. The performance of being the honest man had maybe become more important than the real thing. He was afraid his entire philosophy had become just another act in the play. He basically realized that Diogenes the cynic had turned into a brand. People weren't coming for the philosophy anymore. They were coming to see the props, the lamp, the barrel, the whole shtick. They saw the symbols, but completely missed the point. And the ultimate irony? His entire life, which was a protest against abstract ideas, had become one. So this realization really shook him, and it led to this huge shift in his thinking, especially as he got older.
He started to move away from this idea of pure, absolute, burn-it-all-down rejection of society. Instead, he developed a much more nuanced, a much more pragmatic approach to a tough question. How you actually survive in a world you know is corrupt.
And we see this new philosophy in action in this incredible story about a young woman named Thea. Now, she was totally trapped, stuck between a forced marriage and a super risky escape. She comes to Diogenes, probably expecting him to say, "Rebel! Defy them all!" But instead, he gives her this totally unexpected strategic advice. He tells her to play the long game. And his advice was just so practical. Step 1. See the choice for what it is. Be honest with yourself that you're picking safety over freedom for now, and don't lie to yourself about it. Step 2. Play the game strategically. Use your husband's resources to get an education, learn skills, build your own power from the inside. And step 3. Survive. Outlast him, inherit his wealth, and then you'll have the resources to live the life you actually want. This wasn't about some noble, self-destructive protest. It was about smart, clear-eyed survival. And this is where he has his big breakthrough. He says, principle without pragmatism is just another performance. He realized that purity is a luxury. It's something the powerful can afford to posture with. But for the powerless, for people like Thea, you can't afford that luxury. You need a strategy. Now, as we get to the end of his life, the manuscript shows Diogenes learning his final and maybe most important lessons. And they didn't come from some deep, abstract thinking. They came from something much more direct and undeniable, the experience of his own body getting old and sick. He started to see that there are really two kinds of truth. First, there's the truth of the mind. That's where we create all our stories, our ideals, our meanings, and, our lies about what we should be doing. But then there's the body's truth. And the body, the body is always right here, right now. It's direct and it can't lie. When it's hungry, it's hungry. When it's tired, it's tired. It just is. And all of this leads to his final, beautiful conclusion, the big synthesis of his entire life's struggle. He finally gets it. Authenticity and performance, they aren't opposites fighting each other. They're actually partners in this crazy, complex dance of what it means to be human. The goal isn't to stop performing. We all perform. The goal is just to be aware that you're dancing. So, in the end, the secret journal of Diogenes doesn't just give us answers. It leaves us with one last, big question. After spending his entire life asking questions of the world, his final one is really for us, for you and me. It's this: are we conscious of the roles we're playing in our own lives? Or have we become so lost in the performance that we actually believe we are the characters?